The Tower of London is the ultimate symbol of royal power. For nearly 1,000 years, it housed kings, queens, and the crown jewels. It served as a fortress, palace, and prison. It is one of the most studied and documented historic sites in the world. Yet, archaeologists uncovered unsettling human remains only 10 feet right under the walkway. Who were these people, and how did they stay hidden for so long? The Tower of London sits on the River Thames, in the heart of London. It's a true medieval castle with thick, well-preserved stone walls, armored gates, and watchtowers like you only see in movies. It was built almost a millennium ago, when William the Conqueror took control of England. He needed a fortress to lock the city down and send the message: the new king is here, so better behave. The entire castle complex covers 18 acres, which is about the exact size of the White House grounds. It still keeps and displays the crown jewels under guard. The Citadel was also a high-security prison for centuries, holding high-profile prisoners locked away. But it wasn't just a prison for humans. For centuries, the tower was a royal zoo filled with lions, elephants, and leopards. The King of Norway even sent a polar bear, which was allowed to swim in the Thames on a long leash to catch fish. One of the biggest attractions is the White Tower, a massive stone keep. Rising about 90 feet, it had been the tallest building in all of London for hundreds of years. Kings famously whitewashed the stones to make them gleam. It stood out like a blinding beacon above the dark, muddy city. Another must-see spot is the Chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, the tower's historic church. It served as the final resting place for famous prisoners and nobles alike. It was just outside of this very chapel that archaeologists made a chilling discovery. The mystery started in 2019 when a routine check uncovered 2 burials. When archaeologists returned to dig some more in 2025, the situation grew from unexpected to, hey, what is going on here? Over 20 skeletons were packed into the soil, mixed with fragments from older burials, proving this spot had been used and reused many times before. These graves span centuries, from the 1200s to the 1600s. So we're not looking at one tragedy. It seems to be a place that kept getting used again and again throughout medieval London. One situation feels like it's from a horror movie. A cluster of at least 6 people from the 1300s that looks unusually messy compared to the others. The timing lines up with the era of the Black Death in London, so this group could be plague-related. But researchers are careful with conclusions for now. On the other hand, some graves look the opposite of rushed. They look expensive. Several people were buried in coffins. In one case, the wood had rotted away completely, leaving behind a perfect shadow of a coffin stamped into the clay. The report says this coffin shadow likely held a juvenile buried in the 1200s. Then there's the chapel itself that might give us some clues. The current building is basically the newest version on this same spot. It's possible that there were 3 or 4 earlier chapels here, and the dig even exposed lost walls and an old floor surface deep down. But what else can we learn about these people? Here's where science can help. Researchers look at teeth. Your adult teeth form when you're a kid, and they lock in chemical traces from the water you drink and the food you ate. It basically creates a permanent record of where you grew up. So the team analyzed 2 specific skeletons. The first one seemed wealthier. The chemistry suggests they might have grown up in Wales and moved around a few times. They even had traces of a high-sugar diet. That was a huge luxury back then. The second person had a totally different story. Their bones showed signs of chronic stress and a much harder childhood. So these were 2 people from opposite ends of the social ladder. One rich and the other not so much. But they both ended up near each other to be discovered centuries later. Millions of people visit the Tower of London every year. They take selfies and walk the grounds, totally unaware that they might be standing on top of massive tombs. And that forces you to ask the obvious question: If a place this famous can hide ancient graveyards, what else is out there? Because the tower is definitely not the only landmark keeping secrets. In 2019, the fire at Notre Dame forced a massive rebuild. That construction forced workers to lift parts of the floor and reveal a spooky secret. Several tombs hiding two human-shaped lead sarcophagi, sealed like metal time capsules. And inside, there were details that shouldn't survive: fabric, hair, and even leaves that were left on the head. This stuff points to an important person. It sounds unbelievable, but they managed to identify the person as Antoine de la Porte, a church official who passed away in 1710. The second coffin became its own mini detective story. Scientists nicknamed the man inside the Horseman because his bones showed signs of riding for years. Some new analysis suggests that he could have been Joachim du Bellay, a well-known poet from the 1500s. So, we have secret graves in London and Paris. That part almost makes sense. These are old, crowded cities where people have lived for centuries. But there's one place on Earth where history wasn't supposed to happen at all: Antarctica. Yes, almost literally the edge of the world with nothing human anywhere nearby for hundreds of miles. And still, in 1985, a Chilean scientist found human remains on an ice-free beach in Livingston Island on a spot now called Yamana Beach. A human skull in Antarctica sounds impossible, but the dates make it worse. When the remains were studied, the person appeared to be a young woman around 21, likely from the southern Chilean channels. She passed away in the early sealing area, roughly 1819 to 1825. That's basically the opening minutes of humans showing up in that region. So why would a young woman end up there? One idea is that she might have come with early sealers, maybe as a guide or part of the crew. The original researcher even suggested she could have been abandoned there for unknown reasons. Plus, the spot where they found her is known to have been visited by early 19th century sealers. The pieces fit together somewhat, but no one can really pin down the story. And it gets even stranger. The first discovery in 1985 was her skull, but later researchers came back to the same area and found more human bones. In 1988 and again in 1993, they recovered two femurs, basically thigh bones, near the original site. The big question is obvious. Were those bones from the same person, or did more than one person pass away here? The plan was to use DNA testing to check if the femurs matched the skull. If these three sites prove anything, it's that new discoveries could be anywhere. But the really exciting part is daydreaming about where we could go next. We are entering a phase where technology could make history feel like time travel. Think about what we can do with the gathered data. We can already pull DNA from a tooth to find out what someone ate or where they grew up. Maybe one day we could take that biological code and use AI to completely recreate a person. Imagine a digital human that looks just like them, with the right eye color, skin texture, and even scars. Then we combine that with the environment. Laser scanning allows us to map every inch of those buried foundations. If you feed that into a physics engine, you can rebuild the walls that fell down 500 years ago. That means in our lifetime, you might not just visit the Tower of London to see it as it is right now. You could strap on a headset and step inside the chapel as it looked in 1348, being face to face with history, just without the bad smells or the risk of catching the plague. There's something absolutely massive and deeply unsettling hiding right next to Stonehenge. More than a dozen giant pits carved into the ground. They're all spaced with eerie precision and form a perfect circle, more than a mile wide. For years, nobody could explain them. They were too big to be animal traps, too organized to be natural sinkholes, and way too deliberate to be random. And the biggest question was, who had the power, knowledge, and reason to reshape the land on this scale 4,000 years ago? So these pits surround a place called Durrington Walls. a huge Neolithic settlement just a short walk from Stonehenge. Archaeologists now say humans dug them around 2500 BCE during the late Neolithic period, when people supposedly lived simple farming lives without metal tools, written language, or modern math. Each pit stretches about 30 feet across and plunges roughly 15 feet down, and together they form an almost flawless ring. To prove the pits weren't natural, scientists went full detective mode. They drilled soil cores and tested the dirt itself, including microscopic traces of ancient DNA and something called luminescence dating, which tells you when the soil last saw sunlight. Every test pointed to the same answer. Humans made these pits on purpose. Here's where it gets wild. The pits weren't dug randomly as people moved along. They were laid out as a single unified project. That means Neolithic builders had to visualize a massive circle, measure distances across open land, and coordinate teams over a huge area without any GPS, drones, or even aerial maps. All they had were people, ropes, wooden tools, and shared knowledge. So why would they invest so much effort and do this? Archaeologists think the pits formed part of a ritual landscape, not a practical one. Durrington Walls already looks like a place where people gathered for ceremonies, feasts, and seasonal events. The pit circle may have marked a sacred boundary. It could have separated ordinary land from a spiritually charged space. Some researchers think the pits symbolized a border between the world of the living and the underworld. The scale of the structure is pretty impressive. It may be one of the largest prehistoric monuments ever built in Britain, even bigger than Stonehenge itself when you look at the total area. And unlike Stonehenge's towering rocks, this monument stayed invisible for thousands of years, quietly hiding under the grass. Generations walked over it without knowing they were standing inside a gigantic ancient design. For a long time, we underestimated ancient people. We imagined them reacting to nature instead of shaping it. But discoveries like this keep proving that wrong. The builders of Durrington Walls didn't just live in the landscape, but engineered it. They thought in terms of geometry, symbolism, and long-term meaning. And this isn't the only case. All over the world, thanks to new technology, scientists keep finding proof that ancient humans worked on massive scales with shocking precision. In the Amazon rainforest, researchers found traces of 2,500-year-old cities hiding beneath the jungle canopy. Scientists spent more than 20 years exploring the area on foot before technology finally cracked the case. The LiDAR technology, which is like X-ray vision that surveys a landscape using lasers to digitally peel away the jungle, scanned a massive area of over 100 square miles. It helped us spot more than 6,000 rectangular earthen platforms, which are likely used as homes or public buildings. They also found agricultural terraces, drainage systems, and carefully shaped farmland. This wasn't a random settlement. It was well planned. At least 15 distinct settlements appeared, all connected by wide, straight roads that cut cleanly through the landscape. These roads didn't follow rivers or slopes as you'd expect. They crossed each other at perfect right angles, forming a grid. The researchers believe people from the Quillamope and Upanu cultures lived there between about 500 BCE and 300 to 600 CE. They farmed corn and sweet potatoes, reshaped the land, and built a system that lasted for centuries. Discoveries like this prove something huge. Far more people lived in the Amazon than scientists ever thought. Tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. And they didn't just survive there, they engineered the landscape. Just like at Durrington Walls, the real story hid in plain sight until technology caught up. Then there's Peru, with one of archaeology's biggest headaches, the Nazca lines. These gigantic designs of animals, plants, and geometric shapes stretch across the earth like an ancient message, so huge that only birds or satellites can see them properly. For decades, people have tried to figure out why the Nazca people made them, how they did it, and what those massive patterns mean. And until recently, the mystery stayed stubbornly unsolved. Walking the desert or flying over it, archaeologists would spot lines and figures and wonder if anything was missing. But the ones already known were just the tip of the iceberg. Traditional fieldwork, with people on the ground slowly mapping things out by hand, took forever, and even then, dozens of smaller designs were just too faint for the unassisted eye. So, instead of scanning the desert on foot, researchers taught artificial intelligence how to see patterns in aerial and drone imagery. They fed terabytes of pictures into trained models, and AI began flagging shapes, curves, and ancient outlines that had been hiding for centuries. In just about 6 months, it identified 303 previously unknown geoglyphs in the Nazca Desert. It almost doubled the number of figures we knew before and showed entire classes of designs. Some of these new shapes are tiny, just a few feet across, but they sit next to giant ones like the hummingbird or monkey. Thanks to all the new finds, scientists can finally start testing theories they had about the purpose of the lines. It looks like the lines weren't just decorations. Many may have been walkways or routes used for ceremonial movement. In case you're worried, AI isn't replacing archaeologists. They still check every promising lead on the ground and interpret everything the machines find. Back in Britain, the pit circle also connects to an even older structure, an early Neolithic site called Robin Hood's Ball. Because it stood so far from the famous stones, it felt like a side character. But it turns out Robin Hood's Ball is from around 3600 BCE, which makes it about 500 years older than Stonehenge itself. It's what archaeologists call a causewayed enclosure, which sounds fancy but really means a big circular earthwork made of ditches and banks. Instead of one clean trench, the ditches are broken into short segments with little gaps in between. And instead of keeping people out, it probably brought them together. Archaeologists think these enclosures worked as gathering places, spots for meetings, feasts, rituals, and social bonding among the first farming communities. Then came the twist no one expected. While preparing land at Lark Hill, a hillside northeast of Stonehenge, for new military housing, archaeologists found signs of another causewayed enclosure. This discovery flipped the map upside down. The landscape wasn't growing outward from Stonehenge, it was already alive long before the stones ever went up. As researchers dug deeper, they found hundreds of flint tools, beautifully made leaf-shaped arrowheads, chunks of human skull, and pieces of antler, likely used as digging tools. Then came the pottery. Different styles showed up in different places, some from the enclosure ditches, others from nearby pits. That matters because pottery styles often act like cultural fingerprints. The mix suggests something big. Different groups of people were visiting the same place and brought their own traditions, tools, and objects with them. All of this changes how we see Stonehenge. The stones didn't appear out of nowhere. They rose in a landscape already loaded with meaning, memory, and movement. Every new discovery like the ones near Stonehenge, in the Amazon jungle and Peru, forces archaeologists to rewrite textbooks and the whole world to rethink the idea of progress. It turns out that ancient people made up for the absence of steel and electricity with observation, creativity, and shared meaning.
Once upon a time, I searched through the jungle, following a map poorly drawn on a piece of cloth. After days of walking, I reached an ancient Mayan temple. As soon as I stepped in, a strange noise echoed. I turned to leave, but suddenly the floor cracked beneath my feet. I fell into a 1600-year-old tomb. Finally, I got lucky. That day, I walked out with shiny jades, carved seashells, a creepy afterlife mask, and a curse that's been haunting me ever since. Well, okay, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that. Or maybe it didn't happen to me. Sadly, real-life archaeology is not like Indiana Jones movies. However, the findings can be as exciting and important, especially in Belize, where archaeologists just found the first identifiable ruler's tomb in the lost Mayan city of Caracol after 40 years of digging. A team of archaeologists finally unsealed a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath a structure they'd already studied. And inside that tomb, which is indeed around 1600 years old, was Shak, the first known king of Karakol. His name is commonly interpreted as Tree Branch Rain Deity, which is poetic and incredibly awesome. King Shak was believed to be a Mayan deity in control of rain, thunder, and lightning. According to folklore, he used axes to strike rain-bearing snakes in the sky to make the rain fall. The buried king is considered to be the dynasty founder. The royal dynasty he founded lasted more than 460 years. And judging by what was buried with him, we can assume that King Shak was greatly celebrated. His tomb had jade beads, carved bones, seashell jewelry, and ritual pottery vessels. One of those vessels shows Ekchua, the Maya deity of trade, receiving offerings. Others showed bound prisoners. Archaeologists could tell they had found some high royalty when they noticed a considerable presence of red cinnabar in the tomb, a rare and expensive material from the Mayan world. Then there's a jade mosaic mask, pieced together like a puzzle to cover the king's face in brilliant green. Jade wasn't used just because it was shiny. It was sacred and symbolically associated with life and demise. Polished jade glistens like it's been dipped in water, cool at first, but quickly warming in your hand. To the ancient Maya, this lifelike quality made jade a living, breathing substance. And for this reason, it possessed high religious and spiritual importance. The Maya associated it with the breath of life, with royalty, and with eternity. Covering someone's face in jade showed just how high-ranking that person was. King Shak's mask has yet to be examined properly, but another famous mask of King Pakal was made of over 346 green jade stone fragments. That's a lot of painstaking work. But maybe the most symbolically fascinating thing about this king was that he was old. Not just lived a good life old, toothless old. To us, that means he didn't clean his teeth properly, because no, you don't usually lose teeth just from getting old, as long as you maintain good oral hygiene and dental care. On the other hand, according to Maya legends, toothless elders were believed to have spiritual powers. Rulers and shamans mediated between realms, and aged or underworld deities were often shown as toothless in art. Now, speaking of realms, Mayan cosmology divided the universe into three layers. The upper world was where the deities lived. The middle world was where humans lived. It was carried on the back of a giant turtle or caiman, and surrounded by a primordial sea. Beneath it was the underworld, known as Xibalba, a dark and complex realm of spirits and ancestors. And certain people, especially rulers, shamans, and elders, were believed to move between these worlds. This king was a ruler, had a deity-like name, and was a toothless elder. Boy, his power level must have been off the charts. But that's not all. Here's the eerie part. The tomb was buried beneath another tomb, which was discovered all the way back in 1993. Archaeologists were investigating a different burial when they realized there was another chamber hidden beneath it, an interesting hiding place. Remarkably, it worked. For more than 1,600 years, no one found him. This makes Shak's tomb the first ever discovered at Karakol that can be definitely linked to a known ruler, thanks to hieroglyphs, burial context, and artifacts. Now, if you're not a geography or history buff, you've probably never heard of Karakol. Today, it's a remote ruin deep in the jungles of western Belize. But around 16 centuries ago, Karakol was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the entire Maya world. At its peak, it covered over 77 square miles, which, for reference, is larger than modern-day Belize City. Its population was around 100,000 people. That's more than most cities in Europe had at that time. And it wasn't just big, it was advanced. Karakol had pyramids, ball courts, palaces, reservoirs, and a very complex road system. Stuff like limestone superhighways stretching miles through the jungle. Past excavations also turned up arrowheads, drills, spindle whorls, figurines, and everyday tools. King Shak's tomb was one of the three major tombs found in the northeast Acropolis. That's near Kana, the central archaeological complex at Karakol, and one of the tallest human-made buildings in all of Belize, even today. It reaches an imposing 141 feet high and contains multiple levels of elite residences and temples. But even with that size, finding tombs isn't easy at all. Most have already been looted. We don't know what else can be hidden there, and in some places, it's too risky to dig up without causing damage. That's why it took researchers decades to finally find something untouched. However, they were able to report over 850 burials and 175 tombs at Archaeological over their 4-decade-long project. One of the earliest tombs, dating to around 350 CE, was a cremation burial containing ritual artifacts such as obsidian blades, atlatl spear points, and ceramic styles associated with central Mexico. So, if you're an archaeologist, this city seems to be an old historical gold mine. And old historical gold mines often come with warnings. For one thing, it's "keep out, the ceiling might fall on you." Besides, even though scientists are excited about this discovery, if the king can really walk between realms, he's probably annoyed by all this. So, what happens now that the king's eternal rest has been disturbed? Well, by opening and stepping into the tomb of Tekab Shak, archaeologists basically stepped into a sealed sacred place. Maya tombs weren't just holes in the ground with a fancy coffin. They were sealed like cosmic vaults, locked up with stone, soil, and sometimes elaborate closing rituals. The goal was to mark the end of their use and protect what was inside. Archaeology at Archaeological and other Maya cities shows this in action: thick ceiling layers, termination offerings, and carefully placed debris, all saying, "This place is done, keep out." Today's archaeologists still treat them that way, working under Belizean laws and cultural protocols, making sure they explore with respect for what these spaces meant to the people who built them. However, it's eerie to think about mythology and whether King Shak is going to haunt the archaeologists. I guess we'll see. They shouldn't be afraid because he's old and has no teeth. Maybe he will annoy them with rain. He's named after a rain deity, after all, and we still don't know about his true power level. The Mayans were a fascinating civilization, and their structures are still among the most mysterious ones you can find. Despite being isolated from the known world, they also built pyramids without cranes, mapped stars without telescopes, and knew how to bury a king. Archaeological is full of secrets: a hidden tomb under another tomb, a toothless king with a scary-looking mask and a deity's name. Almost unbelievable. And amazingly, there is still stuff being found. So maybe it's not too late for me after all. But first, let's see the aftermath of this curse, huh?
Darkness comes right at noon. What is it? The end of the world? Are you getting blind? Is some kind of giant asteroid moving toward Earth? Oh, don't worry. It's just an eclipse, a cosmic event on a planetary scale that isn't scary at all. It's a moment when the moon passes in front of the sun and the planet plunges into darkness for a short time. When this happens, we're not surprised, as scientists usually report on an eclipse several months in advance. With the help of astronomical calculations and mathematical models, they predict the positions of the sun and moon for many, many years ahead. But what happened to people in the past? 100? 500? 1,000 years ago? A farmer goes to work in the field and suddenly the whole area is plunged into darkness. He knows it's morning, but what's happening? Or sailors who travel the seas and oceans and suddenly notice that the horizon and the sky are getting too dark, as if someone had switched off the light. Imagine the primal horror they felt. But in reality, people didn't panic. Even before the invention of computers, giant telescopes, and satellites, people could predict the time of an eclipse in advance. How did they do it? People in the past were much smarter than some of us think. Let's see how they performed astronomical calculations using the example of the Maya civilization and their famous eclipse calendar. So in case you didn't know, the Maya are an indigenous people of Mesoamerica who lived in southern Mexico, northern Belize, and Guatemala. By the way, the word lived is not very fitting. These people are still alive. At the beginning of the 21st century, more than 5 million people spoke 30 Maya languages. Before the Spanish conquest, this civilization was one of the most advanced and complex in the world. The first Maya people appeared here as early as 1500 BCE. By 200 CE, the Maya had already built entire cities with pyramids, courtyards, temples, and infrastructure. The Maya were known for their calendars and astronomical predictions. Many of you have probably heard of the Mayan calendar, whose chronology ended in 2012, so a lot of people thought the apocalypse would start that year. Fortunately, nothing happened. Another Maya invention was the eclipse calendar, which helped these people predict eclipses. For a long time, scientists couldn't figure out how this calendar worked, but now they finally have the answer. It all began with the Dresden Codex, a book from the 11th or 12th century. It has 78 pages made of bark paper and contains knowledge about astronomy, astrology, the seasons, and medicine. It was one of the few books that remained intact after the Spanish conquest of Maya territory. The dates of eclipses used to be very important to people. But why? Did they want to take a day off on that day and have parties? Something like that. Only those parties were scary, dark, ancient rituals, and there was definitely nothing funny about them. The Maya assumed that the moment when the light of the sun was obscured by the moon was some kind of sign from the mythological creatures they worshipped. It was dark in the middle of the day, and the Maya used this time for their sinister rituals. They hoped these actions would please the deities, bringing good harvests, protection from enemies, renewal of nature, or other blessings. We won't go into details. The only important thing is that the Maya wanted to know the dates of the eclipses to prepare for the rituals in advance. For this purpose, they created the eclipse calendar. One of the tables in the Dresden Codex shows 405 lunar months. One such month equals one full orbit of the moon around the Earth, which is about 29 days. The Maya priests used these calculations to predict eclipses for about 700 years ahead. With the help of this calendar, they knew the day of the eclipse. However, modern scientists could not understand how the Maya used this thing. But recently, they found the answer. So, the Maya observed the moon and the sun every day. By observing how the moon moves across the sky, they figured out that it takes about 29 days to pass from one new moon to the next. Then, the Maya noticed that sometimes the moon blocked the sun, and those eclipses didn't occur at random, but in certain cycles. They created a large calendar with numbered lunar months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and so on up to 405 months. During some months, the moon completely blocked the sun, and during others, only partially. The Maya noted exactly which days these eclipses happened. They recorded the moon's position for 405 months. With these notes, they could predict where the moon would be for the next 405 months, and then the next, repeating for hundreds of years. In simple words, they started the calendar anew after passing this deadline. At least, that's what modern scientists thought, but it was a mistake. The moon doesn't orbit the Earth in exactly the same time every month. Some months it takes a little longer, some months a little shorter, just a few hours more or less than the last orbit. Of course, such changes in the schedule were insignificant, but there were many of them, and this made the calendar incorrect. Imagine that you're only a minute late for a meeting with your friends. It's okay. But if you've been running late for 3 months, then you've already got about a 90-minute delay. On the Mayan calendar, which showed 405 months, there were many more of those extra hours. If the Maya always used the last number from one table to start the next one, their eclipse predictions would slowly become wrong. The mistakes would grow bigger each time they reset the table. Instead, the Maya probably began a new table at the 358th month of the old one. In this case, their predictions for when the sun and moon line up would only be about 2 hours and 20 minutes too early, which is very accurate for that time. If we compare the ancient table with what we know today about eclipse cycles, we'll find that this method would let the Maya correctly predict every solar eclipse seen in their lands between 350 and 1150 CE. These small corrections kept the table working well for a very long time. Scientists are sure that with these updates, the table would stay accurate for centuries, with mistakes of less than 51 minutes over 134 years. This shows how advanced Maya math was. It also reveals how deeply the Maya connected their lives and beliefs to the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. We do a similar thing when we have a leap year. February usually has 28 days, but every 4 years it gets an extra day, making 29. Earth goes around the sun not in exactly 1 year, as we usually think, but in 1 year plus about 6 extra hours. Because these extra hours add up over time, after a few years, they become a whole extra day. To keep our calendar correct, we add this extra day to the end of February. This day is called Leap Day. This leads to small time errors, so we consider them in a leap year. The Maya did about the same thing with the eclipse calendar. But how did they choose the reference points for their astronomical calculations? We don't know. They did it without computers, telescopes, or other modern technology. They were just very good at observing nature. By the way, a similar system of cycles made people believe that the end of the world would happen in 2012. The Maya created a calendar that began in 3144 BCE and ended on December 21, 2012. The Maya saw this as the date of ending the old cycle and starting a new one. But our modern culture has turned this point into the end of the world. In addition to calendars, the Maya built unique architectural structures. They invented one of the most advanced writing systems. They were also big fans of liquid chocolate. They grew cocoa trees, then plucked the beans, dried, ground, and mixed these crushed beans with water. They warmed it up and got a frothy and very bitter drink. To make it sweeter, they added honey to it. But they could also throw chili peppers and other spices in there. Maya did many interesting things, but this is a topic for another video. Do you know how much gold has been mined by humans throughout history? About 216,000 tons, and 2/3 of this amount was mined after the 1950s. Different countries, different times, thousands of different people involved. But what if you found huge deposits of gold in one place? What if a giant gold ore deposit was discovered? No, not just giant, but super giant. This is exactly what was found in China. A group of geologists discovered about 40 gold veins with about 330 tons of gold ore. But that's not all. 3D modeling has shown that even more gold lies underneath. At a depth of about 9,800 feet, there may be several hundred more tons. In short, there is a chance that they will discover deposits with about 1,100 tons of gold. Can you imagine how much that is? If not, that's about $83 billion. Wow! Experts say that this deposit contains approximately 4.9 ounces per ton of ore. It seems that this is negligible, but in fact, it's a high indicator in gold mining. Usually, 0.35 ounces per ton is awesome. If all calculations turn out to be correct, it will be the largest gold mine in the world, even bigger than the South Deep mine located in South Africa, with its 1,025 tons of gold. Everyone is worried. Everyone is happy. Gold, gold, gold on their minds. Everyone wants gold. Everyone buys gold. Gold is rising in price. Gold is more reliable than Bitcoin and cash. Gold is associated with wealth and luxury. Gold is always a valuable and profitable investment. But hold up. Why is it so? Why do people go crazy over some shiny metal? The fact is that gold has both practical and psychological value. For centuries, gold has represented power, prestige, and wealth in different cultures. It seems we're born in a genetic memory that gold is valuable. Think of how many problems gold has brought to literary heroes and how many gold-related adventures we've seen in movies. Gold makes people happy and greedy, cruel and intimidated. That's why so many people love it. Yes, it glitters, it's beautiful, but it's also practical. Gold doesn't rust, it doesn't corrode, it can be stored for a long time, and it doesn't deteriorate. It's literally a reliable investment. All other savings may lose value because of crises, but gold remains unchanged. The only problem, it can get stolen. In addition to jewelry making, gold is used in electronics, medicine, aerospace, and many other industries. Bitcoin has a value because of the public support of people around the world. Money has value thanks to the support of authorities. Gold has value on its own. It's tangible and visually appealing, and its worth is also supported by people's centuries-old belief in its enduring value. But never let gold cloud your mind. Many people lose their honor and even their minds over it. Avoid this trap. It's just a shiny piece of metal. There are other precious metals in the periodic table: palladium, silver, copper, platinum. Why is gold number 1? Cheaper metals such as copper, iron, lead, and aluminum corrode and rust. Aluminum is also not durable. Platinum and palladium are more expensive than gold, but they're too rare and difficult to mine. You won't make many coins out of them. Silver is softer than gold. It tarnishes, scratches, and deforms. And, well, to be honest, gold is more beautiful. But there is another reason why gold is so expensive. It's quite difficult to get. Gold mining is a very laborious and long process. In movies or documentaries, you might have seen people standing at the mouth of a river, collecting silt and clay, sifting it through gauze and small nets, and finding gold particles there. That's one of the methods for how gold is mined. You have to work hard to get just a few small pieces. How do they find gold? It used to be luck. Someone was walking along the shore and saw something glistening in the water. But today, gold detection methods are much more effective. Geologists know that gold is present in almost all rocks and soil, but its particles are so tiny that they're not visible. But when the concentration of gold is high and noticeable, work begins to extract it. Special geological teams are engaged in searching for these sites. When they discover gold, they drill wells, then take soil samples and decide if there's enough metal to carry out large-scale mining. Production depends on the deposit. If gold is in hard rock, miners drill holes, place dynamite, and detonate it. The explosion breaks the rock into pieces so they can extract the gold. But this is just the beginning of the work. After collecting large pieces of rock, workers take them to factories to extract valuable material. At the first stage, specialists break large pieces of rock into smaller ones. Using crushing machines, they grind the ore into tiny pieces, similar to gravel. This gravel then enters rotating drums filled with steel balls. The drums spin, and the balls grind the gravel into powder under pressure. This mass is then mixed with water and passes through special filters. After that, gold is extracted from the ore using chemical solvents and complex purification systems. It adheres to carbon, then is separated from it, followed by several additional processes, including electrolysis and further purification. At the end, the gold is melted and separated from impurities, then poured into ingots and sent to other plants for further processing. Yes, it's a difficult and time-consuming process, and quite a long one. And it's not always profitable. You can find a deposit of precious metal, but it will be too expensive to extract it, and the amount of gold there won't be enough to make the effort worthwhile. Only 10% of the world's gold deposits contain enough precious material to pay back for its extraction and processing. There are many areas filled with gold. Do you know how many of them are suitable for productive mining? Less than 0.1%. So this is probably another reason why gold is so valuable. But is there any other material that causes a lot of excitement? Oh yes, this material is called liquid gold, and this is helium. That's the gas used to inflate balloons, but this is not its main value. Helium is capable of reaching ultra-low temperatures, is superconducting, and is lightweight. Helium is used in medicine for diagnostics. For example, for magnetic resonance imaging. Helium cools nuclear reactors and maintains rocket fuel temperatures during launch. Divers breathe a mixture of helium and oxygen during deep dives to avoid diseases associated with pressure changes. Helium is crucial for the modern world. Another precious material is graphene. It's not just one of the most durable materials in the world, it's a highly conductive material. Heat and electricity pass through graphene easily, which makes it very promising for the development of what? Considering that graphene is also flexible, water-repellent, non-toxic, and has antibacterial properties, it's suitable for developing everything. Medical equipment, mechanical engineering, electronics, construction, logistics, energy conservation, space and underwater industries, and much more. Scientists believe that graphene has the potential to enable revolutionary new technologies that could change the lives of all people. Something similar happened with silicon, which is actively used to create semiconductors and rechargeable batteries. It's possible that without silicon, we wouldn't have smartphones, laptops, and other electronic devices. Graphene may also lead to a new technological leap. When the world switches to renewable sources of energy and uses electric transport, graphene can become technological gold. During tests, graphene batteries have shown that they charge more than 70 times faster than regular ones and last 3 times longer. At the same time, they're cheaper and environmentally friendly. Okay, that sounds cool, but where do we get this graphene? It's obtained from graphite, which lies in the bowels of the Earth. One of the largest graphite deposits is located in South Australia. 200 million tons of high-quality graphite. It sounds like it could be enough for the entire planet.
Back in 1912, British newspapers were buzzing with one bold claim: the first humans appeared in Britain, not Africa. It felt like history itself had been rewritten, and everyone bought into it. Crowds cheered, scientists raised their glasses, and the tiny village of Piltdown in Sussex suddenly became the spotlight for what was hailed as the greatest evolutionary discovery ever. It all happened thanks to this guy, Charles Dawson, a curious amateur archaeologist who was dreaming of making a name in science. He claimed he had found bone fragments of a transitional creature between apes and humans. Dawson teamed up with Arthur Smith Woodward, a respected geologist from the Natural History Museum, and together they assembled fragments of skulls, teeth, and even primitive tools. They unveiled their find, the Piltdown Man, to the Geological Society, and for decades everyone believed it. Textbooks even rewrote human evolution around it, and entire generations memorized it as pure truth. But here's the twist. In 1949, new technology to determine the precise age of objects came along, and things just didn't add up. Tests showed that the skull was only about 50,000 years old, not hundreds of thousands. Then came an even bigger shock. The skull and jaw didn't even belong to the same species. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an ape, probably an orangutan. And even worse, they filed down the teeth to make them look more human, and stained the bones to match the surrounding gravel. A Frankenstein fossil and its creator managed to trick the entire world into believing they'd found a missing piece of humanity's puzzle. So Dawson went down in scientific history, but probably not the way he was hoping to. And he wasn't the only one. Some did it for money, others for fame. In the late 19th century Paris, museums were collecting ancient treasures like they were trading cards. When a stunning gold tiara, supposedly belonging to an ancient Scythian king, Ctesiphon, appeared on the market, the Louvre had to have it. It was breathtaking, detailed, majestic, fit for a ruler. The museum proudly paid a fortune and displayed it as a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Then came the heartbreak. A few years later, an entrepreneurial goldsmith from Odessa read about the Louvre's glorious find and burst out laughing. He recognized the tiara because he made it with his own hands. It was a modern piece, a commission he created for local dealers, except they never told him they planned to pass it off as an ancient treasure. The Louvre was humiliated. Once again, the whole world believed in a beautiful lie. and the goldsmith who had just made the museum look ridiculous ended up famous in the world of art. The tiara still holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest goldsmith fraud of all time. Another story of a well-planned scientific hoax takes us to a quiet town of Cardiff, New York, a couple of decades before the Louvre incident. In 1869, workers digging a well struck something hard and enormous. They uncovered what looked like a petrified 10-foot-tall man lying in the earth. Crowds poured in from miles around to see it. Preachers called it proof of the biblical giants mentioned in Genesis. Scientists debated whether it was fossilized or divine. Within days, the Cardiff giant became a sensation. People paid good money to see it, 50 cents a ticket, which was a lot back then. Later, it turned out that a man named George Hull carved the mysterious giant from gypsum after an argument with a Methodist reverend. Hull just wanted to prove how easily you can fool people, especially religious believers, unlike himself. So he buried the fake giant, and it worked too well. Even after experts exposed the hoax, visitors didn't care. They kept coming because they wanted to believe. Over time, the giant changed ownership several times. You can now see it at the Fenimore Farm and Country Village Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Well, speaking of museums, you might have seen crystal skulls that glow under light, presented as sacred artifacts from Mesoamerican temples. Yes, that skull from an Indiana Jones movie with ancient Aztec powers or even extraterrestrial energy. So, museums displayed such skulls proudly until scientists at the British Museum and the Smithsonian decided to give them a closer look, and what they found shattered the myth. They found that the skulls were made with modern rotary tools and abrasives that ancient carvers didn't have. In other words, someone in the 1800s or 1900s made them using modern machinery and fooled the world. They weren't messages from deities or some advanced creatures from space, just very fancy paperweights that tricked so many people into believing in some ancient superpowers. Well, let's jump several decades closer to the present day, shall we? In the 1960s, Yale University revealed what looked like a discovery that could rewrite world history: a 15th century map showing North America labeled Vinland. It meant Vikings had mapped America long before Columbus. The headlines were sensational. The idea was romantic. Explorers crossing icy seas century before Europe even knew America existed. But something just didn't add up. The parchment was generally medieval, but the ink wasn't. Decades of testing revealed it contained titanium dioxide, a pigment invented in the 20th century. In 2021, Yale confirmed it. The Vinland map was a modern forgery, drawn over old parchment to make it look ancient. It wasn't proof of Viking genius, but rather of human cleverness on one side and the tendency to be easily persuaded on the other. And when we speak of persuasion, you don't have to try too hard when a really trustworthy source like National Geographic shares something, right? Well, in 1999, it presented what it thought was the ultimate discovery: a fossil that bridged the gap between dinosaurs and birds. It was called Archaeoraptor, and it was going to change everything we knew about evolution. The fossil came from China, and on first glance, it was perfect: a dinosaur tail, bird-like wings, and bones that seemed to tell the story of flight's evolution. But soon, paleontologists started whispering. The bones didn't quite line up. CT scans revealed the ugly truth. It was literally glued together from parts of different species. A dinosaur tail from one fossil, a bird body from another. Someone had Frankensteined the fossils to make a more valuable specimen. The embarrassment hit hard, especially for National Geographic, which had built an entire story around a fake the world liked to believe. Now, if you think scientific hoaxes are all in the past because of all the 20th century high-tech, here's a surprise for you. In 2020, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. made a stunning confession. All 16 fragments of its prized Dead Sea Scroll collection were modern forgeries. They'd spent millions acquiring what they thought were sacred 2,000-year-old texts. only to learn they were made of ancient leather painted with modern ink. The forgery was so advanced that even experts were fooled at first. But after detailed forensic tests, it became clear the holy relics were anything but holy. It wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Thousands of visitors had stood in front of those glass cases, feeling awe, reverence, and connection, only to learn it was a show built on lies. And finally, it's time for one of the eeriest hoaxes of all. In 2000, a mummy surfaced in Pakistan, claiming to be a 26-year-old Persian princess, the daughter of Xerxes. They found her in a gilded sarcophagus, wrapped in golden robes. Her face was eerily well preserved. Archaeologists were stunned, but something about her looked wrong. CT scans, linguistic analysis, and radiocarbon dating revealed the horrifying truth. The mummy wasn't ancient at all. She was a modern woman, and someone likely took her life and then mummified her to sell as a fake relic. Well, yikes. The story went from exciting to tragic overnight and broke many hearts. What was supposed to be a royal miracle turned out to be a human crime and yet another lie. All these stories have one thing in common: hope. People want to believe. They want to touch the past, to find proof that connects them to something bigger. Whether it's scientists looking for the missing link, museums wanting fame, or believers searching for signs of faith, we all crave wonder. History is full of tricksters, and sometimes the best stories come from the fakes that fooled us all.
Divers have found something incredible in a Florida sinkhole, and it was… Stop, we need to leave a warning here. You're about to hear some pretty unusual scientific information. This knowledge will make you the smarty pants in your friend group. But there's also a risk that they'll look at you as a nerd. So perhaps it would be better for you to keep this knowledge a secret. In any case, it won't be superfluous. So, you know that scientists divide the history of our planet not only by time periods, but also by which animals lived at a certain time. For example, 2,000 years ago, Earth was inhabited by the blobfish, and scientists call this time the blobfish period. It's a joke, there's never been such a period, but you get the gist. The period between about 419.2 million and 358.9 million years ago is called the Devonian period, or the Age of Fish. Do you know why? Because the first fish began to appear on the planet. The Paleogene is the period of large mammals. The famous Jurassic period marks the appearance of giant dinosaurs, which we often see in the movies. Even now, we live in a certain period called the Quaternary period. It began about 2.6 million years ago and continues to this day. This is the time of humans and modern animals. So the next time somebody asks you what time it is, you can just answer, it's the Quaternary period. In short, the names of these periods depend more on what creatures inhabit the planet. The longest period is the Precambrian period, or Age of Early Life, the time when life on the planet started to form. Soft-bodied worms and jellyfish swam in the ocean, while microorganisms lived on land. This period occupies almost 90% of the Earth's total geological time. It started about 4.5 billion years ago and ended 540 million years ago. Oh, it's still a video about divers, don't forget. We'll get back to them soon. Considering all these periods, do you know which one is of the most poorly studied? A period about which scientists know almost nothing, especially about the animals that lived at that time. This is the Irvingtonian North American land mammal age. It lasted from about 1.6 million to 250,000 years ago. Scientists have very few fossils that belong to this time, but recently, everything has changed. In the USA, there's the Steinhatchee River, which stretches for several tens of miles in the area of Big Bend, Florida. And just 500,000 years ago, there was a sinkhole instead of the river. This is a hole in the ground that forms when water dissolves the upper rock. This rock is often limestone. Sinkholes appear in places with a lot of precipitation. Sometimes these pits can be invisible. They look like ordinary ground, but the soil in them is loose and can easily collapse. If you accidentally get into a sinkhole, people will hear your screams and help you. But in the distant past, about 500,000 years ago, when animals got there, they couldn't get out of the pit, so it became their grave. After many, many years, a river appeared here, and then several fossil collectors decided to check out this place and discovered a real paleontological treasure in it. They plunged into the river and reached the bottom. There, in the murky water, they saw horse teeth sticking out of the sediment. It'd be pretty scary to find for many of us, but for these guys, it was the jackpot. After the teeth, they found a hoof shaft and the skull of an unusual animal. At that moment, the collectors realized they had made a major discovery. Over the years, the sinkhole at this place had been filled with sedimentary rocks. Then, the river compacted all this mass, which made it possible to keep everything inside the sinkhole in good condition. Many animals got trapped in this pit 500,000 years ago, and only now have people managed to get them out. More precisely, what's left of them. Divers have found more than 500 fossils belonging to ancient animals, including unknown species. They got well-preserved bones of ancient horses, giant armadillos, sloths, and a new species of tapir. The Florida Museum examined the remains and determined that they belonged to the poorly studied Irvingtonian North American land mammal age. Most of all, scientists were struck by two finds in this collection. The first was the remains of a giant armadillo-like creature, and the second was the skull of an ancient tapir. In case you didn't know, this is a very cute pig-like mammal that has a short trunk like an elephant. Divers in Florida found the remains of a distant ancestor of this animal, which may be a new unknown species. Most of the fossils in this sinkhole belong to early Caballine horses, a subgroup that includes modern domestic horses. The remains of horses are so well preserved that scientists have seen signs of wear on their teeth. This will allow experts to understand the diet of these ancient creatures. We often hear news about people finding the remains of ancient animals or dinosaurs in caves, ravines, or at the bottom of lakes. But imagine if they found such remains in a museum. It all started in the early 2000s, north of the Florida border in southwest Georgia. There was a mine where workers mined clay. One day, they found the remains of some ancient animals and gave them to the Florida Museum of Natural History. There, these remains lay in storage, waiting in the wings. And then one day, some guy started sorting them out and noticed a mysterious vertebra of an unknown animal. This little grab caught the guy's attention, so he returned to it over and over again. He studied it, trying to figure out what species the bone belonged to. One day, he realized the bone belonged to an unknown extinct lizard species that looked like a tegu. You've probably seen these predatory creatures that looked like monitor lizards. So, the age of the bone was about 15 to 17 million years old. Let's wrap up our video with something weird. You see this piece of amber-colored stone with stripes? Or is it not the stone? It looks like an ancient seashell. So right now, you're looking at the oldest fossil in history. It's a stromatolite, and its age is, you won't believe it. Make a guess. 100 million years? 500 million years? 1 billion? No. This fossil is about 3.4 billion years old. It represents one of the earliest forms of life on Earth. No, not the stone itself. Stromatolite is just a playground. The early form of life here is these thin strips. They're called cyanobacteria, tiny single-celled creatures. Okay, what about the remains of something bigger? Some ancient animals, for example? Meet the trilobites. They lived here during the Cambrian period which began about 500 million years ago. This is the time when many invertebrates and fish began to appear. Their exoskeletons helped the trilobites stay remarkably well preserved, considering their age. They were arthropods that looked like something between a spider, a scorpion, and a mutant from another galaxy. These animals lived for a very long time, and people find their remains almost all over the world. They appeared at the very beginning of the Cambrian period, survived it, and became extinct at the end of the Permian period. During the Permian mass extinction, when about 90% of all living beings were wiped off the face of the Earth. These creatures swam in open water, burrowed into the seafloor, or crawled along it. They lived like predators and scavengers. The front of the animal was protected by a strong head shield. It had crescent-shaped eyes and a calcified plate on its lower body. This plate covered its esophagus and mouth. It had several pairs of legs growing from its body. The trilobite could also curl up into a ball, like a woodlouse.
The Nemi-ships were massive vessels built by the Romans over 2,000 years ago, complete with marble floors, colorful mosaics, and even plumbing for luxurious baths. Unlike the typical ships of their time, which were mostly used for transport or battles, these were true floating palaces. But the Nemi-ships weren't just feats of Roman engineering and luxury. Their story is a wild one. Lost, found, and lost again. These vessels became the focus of a mysterious saga that's puzzled historians for centuries. The first strange thing about them is related to where they were found. These huge wooden ships were lying at the bottom of Lake Nemi, a volcanic lake with still calm waters, located about 19 miles south of Rome. For ages, local fishermen knew about the wrecks, and rumor has it they were taking advantage of that. They'd use grappling hooks to pull up pieces and artifacts from the Nemi ships, selling them at the markets. That went on until 1446, when some noblemen decided enough is enough and started looking into the legends about the Nemi ships. They realized it wasn't just a fish story. Both vessels were actually sitting about 60 feet deep in the lake, and from there, the mystery only grew. When you think about it, 60 feet isn't that deep, and Lake Nemi is pretty small, only 1.1 mile wide and about 100 feet deep. So why build such massive ships in such a small lake? It doesn't really make sense, especially when we find out who built them. The Roman Emperor Caligula. You know, the one known for being one of the cruelest and most unpredictable Roman leaders. But one thing almost everyone can agree on was his impeccable taste for all extravagant things. Caligula spent money like crazy. It's generally assumed that he blew all the imperial treasury in a year on lavish festivals, feasts, and pampering animals. Yep, he supposedly fed his favorite horse oats mixed with gold flakes. Anyway, he loved excess. So again, why did he build two massive ships in such a tiny lake? Experts think Caligula might have built them there because of the lake's connection to Diana, the deity of the hunt, the moon, and nature, who is worshipped at a sanctuary on the northern shore of the lake. By the way, Nemi is a modern name that we see on today's maps. The Romans used to call the lake Speculum Dianae, which means Mirror of Diana. So it is possible that Caligula saw this as the perfect place to hide away and dock his pleasure barges. He wanted extravagant floating palaces, and that's exactly what he got. The Prima Naie, which means first ship in English, was an enormous 230-foot-long vessel. It's almost as big as today's largest passenger aircraft, the Airbus A380. The ship's hull was split into three main sections, with the back wider and the front narrower. It had two big structures at each end, connected by stairs and hallways, giving the ship an odd look, unlike anything else from ancient times. The Seconda Nave, or second ship, was even bigger. It was in deeper water and farther from the shore, making it harder for people to reach it, which also helped preserve it better. The ship was 240 feet long and 79 feet wide, with a kind of building at the back and a smaller one at the front. Even though the front and back structures were missing at the time the ship was discovered, you can still tell they were there from the way the decks were laid out. These ships were absolutely incredible. They were built with the finest materials. Elaborate mosaics made up the stunning floors, bursting with color, and high-grade marble added a touch of elegance and luxury to the interiors. The ships also had 10 banks of oars, baths, galleries, saloons, and even gardens with vines and fruit trees. Yes, gardens, on a boat. Caligula clearly wanted these ships to be his own private paradise. It's said he threw wild parties on board, where his bad behavior knew no limits. This included having scandalous relationships with the wives of his generals and senators. These ships were definitely designed to impress, showing off not only the wealth and power of the emperor, but also the amazing technical skills of Roman engineers. Evidence suggests that the vessels had technologies we thought weren't developed until later. They had advanced plumbing systems, with some sources suggesting they even had running water. There's evidence of bronze pipes and lead drains, which is insane for ships built in the 1st century. Another thing is that wooden beams were covered in lead to keep away shipworms, those tiny mollusks famous for tunneling into and digesting wood. But the engineers' efforts were a bit pointless in this case, since shipworms don't live in fresh water. There's also a theory that one of the ships had a rotating platform. We still don't know its exact purpose, but it may have been used for the revolving presentation of a statue, probably of Diana, or for entertainment purposes, like guests enjoying their meal while slowly spinning and taking in the view. Who knows? All of these findings have led experts to believe the ships were mainly built for recreation or ancient rituals, or maybe both. Basically, the true purpose of the Nemi ships remains a mystery because there is no solid historical documentation talking about it. Now, even though these ships were technological marvels, they didn't last long. They had only been in use for about a year before Caligula's reign ended. Eventually, the ships were damaged, filled with stones, and sunk to the bottom of Lake Nemi. This brings us back to the story of their discovery. In 1446, they confirmed the wrecks were there, but no one could get them out. Then, in 1929, Italy's leaders decided to drain the lake to rescue the ships. So they pumped out 65 feet of water. It took years to get them out of the mud, but the second ship was finally raised in 1932. During the excavation period, archaeologists found a bunch of precious artifacts from the wrecks. Little by little, vast anchors, bronze decorations, and marble statues came up from the depths, along with fancy oar rings, bronze joints, and copper roof tiles. The cost of these ships must have been astronomical. Recovering the memories and artifacts of Roman times was a very important thing at the time, so taking the ships out of that lake was a huge win for Italy. In 1936, they decided to build a museum to showcase the wrecks and let people visit. But their story took a tragic turn. As you probably know, this was a time really messed up by global conflicts, and Italy was no exception. In 1944, a fire broke out at the museum, destroying the ships and all the important archaeological contents. Okay, so we may never know for sure who started the fire, but we do know the largest ancient ships ever discovered were lost in it. Only some bronze pieces, a few charred timbers, and some other artifacts that were stored in Rome survived. But just like a phoenix, the vessels came back from the ashes thanks to a lot of hard work in rebuilding. After the restoration work, the museum in Nemi was reopened in the 1950s. If you ever visit it, maybe you can see a part of a green and red mosaic floor from one of the ships, which, funny enough, got lost at some point and was used as a coffee table in a New York apartment for over 50 years. With all the tragic twists in the Nemi ship story, who knows? Maybe there are still pieces of these floating palaces hidden in different parts of the world.
Hold your breath, we're going to the seabed. What do we have here? A lot of fish, octopuses, coral reefs, perfect circles of unknown origin, shrimps, stingrays, sharks. Wait, what? Hold on. What are those perfect circles on the seabed? Wow! Perfectly symmetrical, 67 feet in diameter, with a clear outline. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. There are so many of them. 1,300 strange rings at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. What are they doing there? How did they appear? Try to guess. Traces of an extraterrestrial civilization? The remains of an ancient city? A new kind of sea creature? There's a 99% chance you won't be able to give the correct answer. But here's a little hint. There's a connection between these circles and the Ice Age. It seems that the mystery has become even more complicated, but let's find the answer together. So it all started in 2011. Marine biologists discovered mysterious circles at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, and the first question that arose was why no one had noticed them before, given the vast territory these circles occupied. The fact is that a big part of the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea is too shallow and close to the shore. And for this reason, no one is engaged in mining there. At the same time, the bottom is too deep for scuba divers. Thus, the circles were in some kind of blind spot. Let's move on. The circles are approximately the same size with a clear outline and perfect symmetry. But the strangest thing is that there's a dark spot in the center of each of them. Visually, it looks like a fried egg with a yolk in the middle. In 2013, biologists discussed the discovery at a scientific conference and made assumptions about the nature of these circles. Perhaps they were connected to underwater volcanoes that left such strange marks after the eruption. Perhaps it was a strange geological formation. But why are they so perfectly round? It doesn't look like they appeared by accident. Okay, let's move on. Is it possible that it's coralline algae growing in weird shapes? You can guess as much as you'd like, but scientists needed to go down to the bottom and study the rings up close. So they did. In the center of the ring was a large protrusion formed by red calcareous algae. This ledge was several feet high and wide, and there were swaying fan-shaped growths at its top. The strange ledge was surrounded by some kind of pale scree that looked like debris. The black ring itself consisted of rhodoliths, accumulations of hard, rocky algae. Scientists realized that those weren't just circles. They seemed to be alive. Okay, more questions appeared. Let's say it's some kind of strange algae. But why form these circles? What made them this way? Scientists took samples of the material from the center of the circles and found out that they were about 21,000 years old. At that time, large-scale events were taking place. They changed the appearance of Earth and the fate of all creatures living on it. 21,000 years ago was the peak of the last ice age. The Mediterranean Sea was much smaller and colder than it is now, and the seabed on which the mysterious rings appeared was closer to the surface. Now it's dark here, but at that time, this place was illuminated by sunlight passing through the water. Scientists also discovered several caves with layers of sedimentary rocks near the circles. In the past, these caves were located above the coastline and were washed by waves, resulting in erosion and the appearance of these empty gaps. Now they're completely underwater. Okay, what does this give us? The cold sea was not too deep during the Ice Age. What's next? Next, the scientists found out the nature of these strange ledges in the middle of the rings. At first glance, they looked very similar to corals, but in fact, they were sediments formed by coralline algae. These photosynthetic organisms created a skeleton of calcium carbonate, and the reason they did it there is that it was a warm place with access to sunlight. In the beginning, these algae were thriving. They expanded outward and formed something similar to domes or large pancakes. Then the Ice Age began to end. The weather became warmer, the water gradually heated up, and giant continental glaciers began to melt. A huge amount of melted ice flowed into the Mediterranean Sea. Its level rose, the bottom became deeper, and there was less and less light. The beautiful algae slowly plunged into darkness. Their domes collapsed and left behind those little ledges in the center and pieces of calcium carbonate scattered around. For thousands of years, there was nothing around those algae remains. But where did the big circles come from? After the melting of glaciers, the Mediterranean sea level stabilized about 8,000 years ago. The algae grew new layers in the form of small ledges, those swaying fan-shaped growths. This organism began to develop the pieces of calcium carbonate, and then small pieces began to roll down the ledges. They rolled in different directions, forming those perfect circles. At the moment, this version is the most realistic. Scientists say they have no direct evidence that the mysterious circles appear this way, but they also have no reason to believe that this version is incorrect. If any of you were hoping that someone or something had deliberately drawn these circles, don't get upset. There are other mysterious circles on the seabed, and this time they were created for an important purpose by one amazing creature. In 1995, divers noticed beautiful circles with a geometric pattern right on the sandy bottom of the shores of Japan. It looked like someone had drawn them on the sand. The circles weren't ancient because otherwise the water would have swept the patterns away. Indeed, soon those drawings were erased, but then new ones appeared. Nobody knew what was going on. Was someone drawing stuff to tease divers? But it turned out to be much cooler. The patterns were supposed to attract females, and this someone who drew them was a small, white-spotted pufferfish. The males of these fish flap their fins on the seabed, swim in different directions, and thus draw amazing patterned circles. They have no art education, and they probably can't think abstractly, but they really want to start a family. These fish are about 5 inches long, but their artworks are about 7 feet in diameter. These little artists try their best, but what happens afterward? The female swims in, looks at the pattern, and gives her score. If she likes the pattern, she's ready to start a family. If she doesn't like the drawing, she dashes away and leaves the poor pufferfish with a broken heart. Nothing much is known about the drawings. Scientists can't get into the fish's brain and find the answers. All we can do is observe. And during long observations, scientists noticed some curious things. Around the center, there are perfectly aligned gaps and patterns. The fish not only draws outlines on the seabed, but also decorates them with fragments of shells. That is, the male tries very hard, like an artist working on their painting. The fish creates this masterpiece within 7 to 9 days. After that, undercurrents wash it away, and the fish has to rebuild it if the female doesn't like this work. But if the female chooses the male, they become a couple. The female lays eggs in the center of these circles. Then she swims away, and the male stays with the eggs for 6 days to protect and care for their offspring. The behavior of these fish is similar to that of bowerbirds, birds that build small huts out of twigs and leave and decorate them with colorful berries and flowers. And all this in order to attract a mate to create offspring. In the near future, humans extract ancient DNA from a long-extinct creature. They patch up the missing pieces with genes from a modern-day animal. Then, in a high-tech lab, they bring the species back to life. Sounds familiar? Well, yes, that's actually the plot of the original Jurassic Park. But the thing is, we're now living in the timeline where researchers are doing exactly that. Although this time, the star of the show isn't a raptor or a T-Rex. Believe it or not, scientists at Colossal Biosciences want to bring back the giant moa. Think of it as an ostrich, only twice as tall and way bulkier. It was a massive flightless bird that went extinct almost 600 years ago. The moa once roamed the forests of New Zealand, towering up to 12 feet tall with its neck stretched. This makes it the tallest bird to ever walk the planet. It weighed almost 500 pounds. But funny enough, that doesn't make it the heaviest bird that ever lived. That crown goes to Madagascar's elephant bird. But still, 500 pounds of bird is not something you want running at you in the woods. The giant moa didn't have wings or a beak built for battle, but it didn't need them. For thousands of years, it lived in peace because it had no natural predators, literally being the top bird. Well, almost. The only thing that could take down a moa was the Haast's eagle, a giant bird of prey with a 10-foot wingspan and claws like steak knives. That was the balance of nature, until people arrived. Around the 13th century, the Maori settled in New Zealand, and as humans do, they adapted quickly. The moa, big and slow as it was, became a crucial and probably delicious food source. Within just a few generations, the moa was gone, and not long after, so was the Haast's eagle. No more moa meant no more meals. It's just how nature and survival work. The Maori were skilled hunters, making a life in a new land. But their arrival marked a turning point in New Zealand's ecosystem, one we're still talking about today. The moa wasn't just big, it played a huge part in keeping forests healthy. Now, 600 years later, scientists want to recreate it using cutting-edge technology and ancient clues. But why go through all this effort to resurrect a bird that's been gone so long? Well, according to Colossal Biosciences, the same company behind those gene-edited direwolf cubs that we talked about before, it's not just about the wow factor. They say moas helped shape the landscape itself. In New Zealand, moas helped control vegetation and spread native plant seeds. They kept forests from becoming overgrown and unbalanced. Without them, some plants lost their main seed carriers, and invasive shrubs started to take over areas once kept in check. So, the idea is, if we can't rewind the clock, maybe we can reboot the system. Introduce an animal that fills the same job that can help restore what's missing. Okay, but how do you bring back an extinct species? And is that even possible? Well, sort of. But not in the sci-fi clone a complete dinosaur way like in a movie. The original moa has been gone for centuries, and its DNA is damaged, degraded, and full of holes. So instead of making a perfect copy, researchers are going to remix, so to speak. They'll take whatever usable moa DNA they can find and patch the gaps using genes from its living relative, probably the emu. With a tool called CRISPR, which is like a Photoshop for genomes, they'll stitch it all together, tweak the embryo, and grow it in a lab. If all goes well, the result will be something that looks, walks, and stomps like a moa, but not exactly a genetic twin. It won't be a clone, and it definitely won't be 100% authentic. However, Colossal Biosciences says that's fine. If it behaves like a moa and fills the same job in the ecosystem, that's mission accomplished. So no, we're not recreating the past. Not literally. We're building something new that plays the same role. But here is where it gets interesting. Colossal Biosciences seems to be just getting started. They've got an entire extinction comeback roadmap in place. In addition to the giant moa, the company is also working on reviving the woolly mammoth, the dodo, and the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. Each one vanished under different circumstances, but the goal is the same: to create a modern version that can fill the ecological gaps those animals left behind. Woolly mammoths were Ice Age elephants. They were befriending ground sloths and shaking the Arctic ground with each step, knocking down trees and flattening snow. During the Ice Age, this region wasn't the frozen wasteland we know today. It was called the Mammoth Steppe, a dry, windy grassland stretching from Spain to Siberia to Alaska, filled with cold, hardy grasses and scattered shrubs. Mammoths helped keep it that way. However, some scientists think that their disappearance may have turned open ecosystems into soggy, carbon-trapping wetlands. So now, the idea is to mix mammoth DNA with Asian elephants to create a fuzzy, cold-loving hybrid that could help the Arctic stay grassy instead of swampy. Maybe even help slow down climate change by keeping the permafrost frozen a little longer. The dodo bird is probably the most famous extinct animal in history. It lived on the island of Mauritius, where it ate fruit and helped spread seeds across the forest. After European sailors arrived, the number of dodos slowly dwindled. It disappeared in the late 1600s, less than a century after it was first discovered, and some scientists believe that its absence had lasting effects on the island's ecosystem. One example would be the Tambalakoke tree, also known as the dodo tree, which might have depended on the dodo to help its seeds sprout. The theory has been debated, but it's safe to say that the dodo had a part in keeping the island's plant life balanced. Now, Colossal is aiming to reintroduce a bird that's similar to the dodo, hoping it can help those forests regrow as well. And then there's the thylacine, my favorite. It's part wolf, part kangaroo, with tiger-like stripes. Despite these strange features, it was a top predator and helped control prey populations in its habitat. But after being blamed for attacks on livestock, it was hunted to extinction. Researchers believe a new thylacine could rebalance nature where things have gone out of hand. So yeah, the moa might be the headline this time, but it's just one project on a much longer to-do list. However, this is where the big debate begins, because not everyone's on board with this whole bring back a beast plan. While scientists dream of second chances, plenty of people still have big questions. For example, are we actually helping the environment or just poking it with our really expensive science stick? These new animals aren't exact copies. They're mashups. Close enough maybe, but not the originals. Also, ecosystems aren't machines where we can just swap out a part and expect them to work the same. There's also the wildcard factor. A lab-made moa might not act like the ancient one. It could munch the wrong plants or throw off the balance by outcompeting something that wasn't even around the last time it existed. Some experts worry that tossing new species into today's ecosystem could backfire. After all, the world they're coming back to? It's different. And in some cases, their old homes don't even exist anymore. There's also a deeper concern. The message this sends about extinction. If people believe we can just bring things back, will they take conservation any less seriously? Will protecting endangered species feel less urgent if extinction stops being permanent? So while the science behind all this is undeniably impressive, the ethical questions aren't going away. Should we be reviving species, or should we be doing more to protect the ones that are still here? If both options are true, how do we do so successfully? Whether it's mammoths, moas, or dodos, one thing's clear. We're not just studying nature anymore. We have the power to rewrite it. And like Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. Let me know what you think. And as always, stay on the bright side.